So I'd be really reticent here not to mention AI. I know I'm jumping on the bandwagon a bit, but I'll try and be a bit more specific around the subsectors within AI that I'm particularly interested in. So I'm really interested in things like embodied AI, which is imbuing AI into physical systems, such as an autonomous vehicle or robot. I'm interested in AI as it applies to sciences, so things like materials discovery, physics-based modeling, drug discovery. And I'm also interested in the capabilities of small and tiny language models to make existing foundational models more efficient. I also think there's some really interesting startups being developed in the quantum space. They have been a little bit overshadowed by AI recently. Those are things like quantum cryptography, full stack quantum computing, quantum hardware components and networking. And I also think you're going to see a lot of interesting startups being built in the cybersecurity space as well. In terms of trends within the wider venture industry, I'm really interested in what's happening in the secondaries market at the moment. I think projects like the UK government is developing with Pisces is going to be interesting in being able to provide liquidity in the private markets. And in that sense, startups are going to be able to stay private for longer through this secondary mechanism.
One of the big trends that we're really interesting right now is the role of tech, particularly AI, in solving social problems, particularly for the public sector. We all know how tight finances are and how big some of the problems we face in society is. And tech can play a really big role in solving some of those problems. And that's really exciting. We see a lot of that deal flow at the moment.
The industries or trends I'm most interested in right now are fintech and regtech, where technology meets regulation. That tension creates real innovation because you have to be creative inside constraints. And I'm especially watching how trust is being rebuilt digitally through verification and compliance tools that let capital move more confidently.
Ultimately going to be completely unsurprising, but AI is a trend that we're seeing across all major industries right now. And I think that's the key thing. AI in itself is not a sector, it's not an industry, it's a technology, it's an enabler. So when we look at AI as fuel ventures, we're not looking for AI companies, we're looking for companies that utilize AI within certain sectors. Now, for us, the key sector that we're really interested in is quite highly verticalized regulated sectors. The reason that we're looking at that space specifically is because we are worried about the prevalence of the existing large language models, people like OpenAI, Anthropic, in terms of changing these lower regulated industries, whether they be top of sales funnels, recruitment, things like that, because they have relatively easy inroads. What we look at instead are businesses that operate in regulated, highly verticalized spaces where these large LLMs are not going to be able to meet the regulatory requirements in order to act in these industries really actively. And so we look for those businesses because we think it's an opportunity for them to bring some quite archaic industries where there is extremely large spend really into the 21st century using modern technology. Another area that we're really interested in and we remain interested in is fintech. And specifically at the moment, we're doing a lot around stablecoin payments. We've made 2 investments this year into stablecoin payments businesses. And we're also quite interested in the concept of roll up within fintech industries, mainly because we now see there is a group of companies that have done reasonably well, but are struggling to get real venture scale that could be rolled up into a really attractive business proposition.
At Odyssey, we have a very strong thesis that Europe is incredible at building deep tech businesses coming out of universities, coming out of R&D groups, with deeply technical, scientific founders building incredible businesses and new technologies in the areas of energy, in terms of new materials, in terms of health, in terms of industrial, taking science out of the lab and making it to reality. And we have an amazing thesis that AI is accelerating that hugely. What used to take years and millions of dollars 5 years ago can be done in weeks in compute now. And that's taking these physical industries and transforming them at the speed of software. The third thesis we have is that Europe's amazing at inventing that, but it's not great at funding that. There aren't great many founders who have become VCs. There's not much money in Europe to do it. And so we take those incredible founders and help them go global, specifically the US, super fast. So when you think about that, when you think about what industries are being attacked by AI fastest, which are Europe great at, and which have the biggest industries that haven't yet been disrupted and softwareized, then we think of healthcare, we think of personalized medicine, we think of new types of interaction with the computer, like neurotechnology, and we think of new materials that are coming out that are transforming everything in our whole world, which are trillion-dollar industries that are completely haven't been changed, like Portland cement. Totally ubiquitous to build stuff, was invented 200 years ago. Nylon, 90 years ago, coming up to 100. These haven't been changed in those time periods. And so they're ripe for new innovations, new scientific methods being driven by AI to come up with new ways of doing things. And energy is the classic example, right? Energy powers our world. The next thing is the people in it and how we build it.
I think the main one that I am, I guess everyone is worrying about at the moment is what is intellectual property, or what is a competitive advantage? Because how do you protect your business when effectively tools or what people can do now makes it so easy to replicate a lot of things? Therefore, where do you get that competitive advantage? How do you create a moat or a competitive advantage? So for us, I think we're looking at the different routes, things like data and exclusivity, anything that can only be used by you. Equally, the other side of it is patents or regulatory protection, some legal protection for the things you do. I'm also really interested in the change of how people are going to be interacting with businesses. We lost, over the last sort of 30 years, a lot of our physical shop fronts as the high streets declined. Are the AI tools that are coming now, or the consumer use of AI, does that mean that the digital shop fronts are going to lose their power? Are people going to be able to have that touch point with their customers in the same way they used to? So I feel like the consumer and advertising and media sectors are going to probably experience one of the biggest shakeups as we go forward. So I find that sort of turnaround or change in the industry really interesting.